elephant that's not in the room, I suppose, which is that we are short a person today. Cal is not here. And a little bit of a funny story, actually. So last week, Taylor came to the team, and he said, guys, I've been thinking hard, and I came up with a great idea to fix the game. We're going to delete Warrior. And Cal was not very happy with this. And so he said no, and Taylor body slammed him 6 feet through a steel cage where he plummeted through a table. And the last we saw of him was him walking off, muttering, "Kids these days." So he's not going to be with us today on this stream. But there you go. Anyways, Taylor, how's it going
Bora
today?
que bora.
How you doing?
You know,
Caos.
pretty good. Happy to be
Dois
here.
nerds.
You know, sad we can't have
Mano, eu acompanhava o Roy antes dele entrar pra Arena Net.
the
Ele era
shining
streamer, né?
light in the darkness be here with us.
Shining light in
But
the darkness.
you know,
Indeed.
nonetheless, we will persevere and continue on.
Very good. Very good indeed. No, in all seriousness, Cal is just on vacation today, so he could not make the stream before we let the rumor mill go too far. But yeah, so he will be back with the next stream. No worries, nothing too crazy there. And yeah, we'll be reunited as the Three Musketeers yet again. But today you are stuck with just Taylor and I. We'll be running you through the patch notes for the June balance patch. And as always, the patch notes will be posted on the forums at the end of this stream once it is concluded. Once again, and as always, please give us your feedback on the forums, on Reddit, wherever it is that you choose to give us your feedback. We will be looking. We have a long weekend, Memorial Day. Monday's off, so we got a lot of time to read feedback, a lot of extra time. But yeah, I think we can just get right into it. Get started with the patch notes.
Bom, vamos lá, guys. Vai começar.
First up, we got some general sort of changes, sort of overall changes. Nothing, not a class-specific change. We got a couple of amulets that are going to be added to the PvP.
Os dois
panel
amuletos,
there.
né, que eles já tinham
Heretics and
anunciado.
Tyrants amulets. You can read
Não vai ter
those.
nenhuma
You
mudança,
can
então.
see
Esse
stat
Tyrant
combos there.
amulete, muito
Ruby
interessante.
the
Vou
Ogre,
testar aí um
Tormented,
monte de build.
are also going to be added to the PvP build panel. Taunt, we're going to be increasing the
O Heretics eu
damage
não gostei
from
muito
75
não,
to
guys.
100,
Mas
a little bit stronger
vejo
there,
alguns
against strike
Rangers
bars.
usando,
And
Druida, né?
Frostor,
Sou
this is
Beast,
going to be a little bit
talvez.
specific change, but it is still sort of a general note overall, is going to have its chill duration reduced from 2 seconds to 1
Duas
second.
runa
Again,
nova.
that's going to be world versus world only. So these are just sort of some general changes there overall for the game mode. But first off, we're going to start off with Warrior, which we
Chat da
are
Twitch
not
pra
actually
mim
going
não
to be deleting
aparece,
from the
agora
game.
apareceu.
So we've got some
Ah,
support
nice.
Warrior buffs here. We've got some improvements
Doideira.
to the strength trait line, specifically in the competitive game modes, and we've got some defensive utility buffs, mostly in the PvE game modes.
Vai ter buff no Warrior
So we've just
Support.
got kind of some general Warrior changes. Looking at kind of improving some usability there for some banners. Again, we're trying to
buffando
make support Warrior a little bit
a
stronger.
staff de novo, é
especially,
isso?
you know, after we've got staff
Bom,
coming
ali
into the game.
o
Getting a
banner
pretty strong weapon,
whatever.
pretty strong archetype there for Warrior. So we're going to be
PvE.
seeing a lot of changes that are sort of going towards that. Also looking at reducing some cooldowns.
O
for some
Tactics e o
stance skills.
Defense são
this
é,
is
os,
gonna
é o
be
banner
PvE
de...
Once again, a couple more similar sort of notes there. Frenzy going to have its cooldown
Esse cara tá
reduced.
indo
Got some
rápido
other,
demais, porra. Não
utility
dá nem
skills
tempo de
that are
ler.
having some cooldown reductions in PvE.
PvE.
And again, another little banner update there. Here's some of the strength notes.
Caralho, vocês estão conseguindo ler?
Kind of focusing on
Tá
making,
muito rápido, mano.
Strength Warrior
Que
a little bit more
isso?
of a competitive option for some competitive modes. Competitive twice. Like to see that.
Que sabia, porra. Não é
Dodge,
possível que
strength, might
só
be
eu
strength,
tô...
off, obviously,
Pô, tô tentando ler o bagulho, não tá dando
support
tempo,
warrior
guys.
archetype that we were talking about a little bit. And moving away from the general Warrior changes, halfway through this slide, again, last couple, or top changes there are going to be a little bit more for that support Warrior side. Big change here, Martial Cadence is going to be recharging soldiers' focus on weapon swaps, and also going to be causing it to remove conditions from allies. We're going to be reducing the quickness duration down a little bit in the competitive modes, though, obviously just as we're buffing this trade up pretty significantly. We're going to be reducing some of that quickness duration, that quickness application. And then heightened focus in the discipline line is going to be getting a little bit more value there for some support trait line, or support warriors there. And then we look at the Spellbreaker trait improvements. We're just kind of looking at some of the meditation skills, trying to get them a little bit stronger, get a little bit more usability for those. And Thief, that's going to be it for Warrior.
Bom,
So,
eles bufaram
Taylor, if you
então
wanna talk about some of the
o
Thief
Warrior
changes we've got
Support,
going
né?
on?
Vendo
Yeah, so Thief,
tá.
we're taking a look at Venoms,
Defensive
as far as
Utility
those
Skills
go
buffs
in
pra
your
Tiff,
because
guys.
Venoms are pretty good
Meu
right now
Deus,
on their
as
own,
utility
but the
skill
problem
do
starts
Tiff
when
já
you
são
have multiple
roubadíssimas,
units
mano.
right now, they only stack to the
Vamos
amount
ver, né?
that one use gives.
Vamos ver isso
And so
daí,
if you have
mano,
multiple
mas...
that are using on the same cooldown timer, it gets really awkward, you drop damage,
Já tô até vendo o
bad.
Tiff
So
voltar a
we've
ser
been trying to address
câncer,
that.
mano.
As well, we
Tiff
have
Tanker.
some other buffs to things
Não,
in
Cris, mas
PvE
tipo,
that,
defensive
you
pode
know,
ser
aren't really that
breakstone,
great right
né?
now,
Os
and
breakstone que o
could use
Tiff tem, pode abaixar cooldown,
help.
pode melhorar efeito, vamos ver, vamos ver.
So yeah, so this first page is just a bunch of sword buffs.
Ah, isso daí é
in
PvE, PvE
You
foda-se.
know, we're gonna be realistic.
Ah, isso daí
and
você
know
pode ir
that
rápido,
these
guys.
they're not gonna make like sword any like meta
Leve tá
DPS
baixa.
weapon or anything, but it should feel a lot better to use in
Vou
open
aumentar
world
aqui.
and be an option for the people that really
Melhorou,
want to use
melhorou?
sword. We see that sword is like really strong and competitive, so we didn't want to change any like key mechanics to it, but we did want to just try and buff up
Aumentar
things
pouco
to add.
mais.
Alright.
And this kind of goes along, same thing with
Ooh,
some of
load.
the pistol skills.
Load
not
getting
really-
some buffs. Loving it.
Yeah. Not really as great as it could be,
PvE,
so we're
PvE,
kind of bumping it up
foda-se.
a bit. Obviously, not expecting this to be a huge change, but why not? Could be
Salve,
better.
salve, Cris, boa tarde.
And Scale Venom is the first Venom change you see. They're all going to follow the same pattern, basically, where they're getting their stack cap increase so that you can play Venoms in a group of other thieves and not feel bad about it.
Yeah, and yeah, so this is just going to be the first Venom we're seeing. We just couldn't fit them all on the same page because there's a lot of Venoms. And so sort of similar changes there for the rest of them, which we'll be showing here. Take a quick look. Also, I apologize for
Okay.
zooming through the Warrior changes a little bit quickly there. I just didn't want to make Taylor too angry by staying on Warrior for too long, but we'll take a little bit of a
Pedir
breather. We'll slow
desculpa
down
pelo
a little
menos,
bit.
né?
I'm just very excited. I'm pumped
Não
up this
consegui ler
morning.
nada,
It's my
mano.
bad. We'll slow things down for the rest of it. We'll have a nice comfy stream for the rest
He
of it.
feels the weight of having to cover for Cal.
That's
making
it,
him a bit
basically. Yeah.
anxious.
I do get anxious when Cal is not around. It's
Mhm.
true. It's known. Moving off of the Venoms, got some mostly
Ah
just
lá, ah
cooldown
lá.
reductions. In
Ah, mas é
PvE
pra
for a lot of
PvE,
utility
guys.
skills.
Ah, PvE é
Yep,
foda-se.
so a big theme
PvE é
you're going to be
foda-se.
seeing during this patch thought in Warrior, you're seeing it here, you're going to see for the other professions, is we took
Mudar
a
nada na
pretty
minha vida
decent
isso daí.
pass on a lot of the defensive cooldowns for PvE and tried to normalize their cooldowns to about the 25-20 second range, depending on what they are. Because a lot of skills had really high cooldowns for PvE, kind of due to back when the game, all of the modes were combined in their balance, and they had to have higher cooldowns for the competitive modes. Now that it's fully split, don't really need that, and so we did a bigger
Caralho,
pass to
reduziram
try
pra
and,
caralho o Shadow
you know, if
Refugee,
you
hein?
take one
É roubado essa
defensive
skill.
utility,
Não é
it
ruim
should
não,
feel
mano.
pretty good
Ainda bem que
um,
tomara que não venha pro PVP isso
in
daí.
open world and even environments that you
Shadow
just want your
parte pra
build to be
raid
more
agora.
survivable.
Verdade,
You can drop
verdade,
some
verdade.
damage if you're usually greeting for three
Verdade,
defensive, or
Caos.
three offensive utilities.
Interessante.
Now you can take some defense, and it'll be pretty efficient for that one slot. And then at the bottom here we see Shadow Portal. It's getting its uses increased from 5 to 10, 10 being a whole squad, or in PvE content, yay. 5 was kind of bad if you can only do half your squad, when a Mesmer and Scourge can do everyone, so now you can do everyone. So, yeah.
More thieves, more often. What's not to love?
PvE, PvE, PvE e
This
PvE.
is all kind of the
Foda-se,
same,
PvE,
increasing
guys.
for
Vou até
PvE,
esquentar um
some
cafezinho ali
defensive,
enquanto eles vão
options.
falando aí.
You see acrobatics line, some daredevil defensive options getting buffed. So, nothing big there.
Well, but we are buffing pumping up, and that's pretty important to call out.
Pumping up.
Because
That's pretty good.
who
Yep.
doesn't love pumping up? Am I right?
Get pumped.
Yeah, I got some Deadeye Spectre changes there. A little bit of a nice bump there for Neil in PvE. And then Shadow Sap, again, going to be a little bit, or not literally a little bit, going to be 50% stronger now in terms of its splash effectiveness in PvE. And Well of Silence going to be having its cooldown.
Ó, só PvE, guys? Ah, então tá, né? Já tava com medo de Tiff voltar a ser câncer.
Alright, moving on to Revenant. That's going to wrap it up for
Só
Thief.
PvE tá de boa.
We
PvP
got some
Herald
Power Renegade
Improvement.
buffs. We
Ixi.
obviously, had a
Ixi,
pretty
ixi,
big
ixi.
change to Renegade in the last
Será que é
major
Power
patch,
Herald?
with the collar rework. We're looking at just kind of getting
Power
some
Herald
Power
é
Renegade
roubado,
buffs
hein,
in
quando
general,
fica forte.
as we still haven't really seen it, fall into favor anywhere. And then we're looking at making Herald a little bit stronger, specifically in PvP. It's sort of fallen by the wayside a little bit. Not, bad or anything,
Tem que
but
nerfar o
definitely getting
Wind,
overshadowed by
sim.
some of the other Revenant
Mas eu acho que
specializations on
não vão
Vindicator,
nerfar não. Já nerfaram o
just other
Hammer, o
classes in
Caos.
general that sort of match
Nerfaram o
its play
Hammer,
style.
que era o que tava deixando o Vind roubado, né?
Not a lot of core Revenant specific
ver.
things, so we are going to be just starting off with Herald
nada
changes on this first page
demais.
as well. But here you can see some of these changes that we're making to try and make Herald a little bit stronger in PvP. And again, these are going to be PvP focused changes.
Caralho, ficou meio
aspects,
forte. Tá
which
meio
is,
forte essas mudanças, hein?
gonna be all game modes,
Peraí, pegar o
having
café
its,
ali.
base healing increase, as well as Vicious Reprisal going to be going up a little bit there in World vs. World and PvP. Again, some Renegade buffs.
Yeah, the big thing is that Revenant's performing pretty well everywhere in PvE, so not a lot for it there. As far as a class whole, and then as far as
Em questão de número,
competitive
ficou
modes, we're
roubado essas
focusing
coisas aí,
on
hein, mano.
Herald. You saw that we're increasing the effectiveness of a lot of the invocation grandmasters. They were nerfed down a lot, and Song of the Mist was really the only option people took. So we're trying to make the other grandmasters more appealing. We're being pretty careful with charge mist buffs. We've seen that when you give energy to revenants, really interesting things can happen. So trying to keep the buff small. Same thing with Vicious Reprisal. Retribution isn't really taking much, so we're giving it a very small buff to see if people are interested in taking it. But going hard on the buffs, we're being pretty wary of what a bunker rev could become with it.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to the Renegade specific changes. Again, just
Renegade,
trying
guys.
to give a little bit more power to Power Renegade.
Ó, será que vai voltar a ter
so
Renegade? O
bumping
Tuntão
up
que vai
some of the
gostar
numbers
dessas
there.
mudanças.
Obviously,
Ele é mono
it's not
Renegade?
gonna be necessarily power specific
Mono
change,
não,
but
né?
the
Mas
base
é
healing gonna be
main
going up.
dele.
Pardon me. Energy cost going to be going down for Ice Razor's Ire for PvP only. Citadel Bombardment going to be getting just a little bit better usability and some better damage numbers there as well. Energy numbers there.
Boas
Energy cost numbers
mudanças
there.
aí.
And then Heroic Command, again, energy cost going to be going down, PvP focus only.
Caralho, ficou forte,
Yeah,
não ficou
so
não?
the bombardment change is
Principalmente
gonna be pretty
a-
decent for everywhere. Its spread is now
Usar a alma
matched
do
to be pretty
Renegade,
similar
né?
to
Que dá
Grenade
os
Barrage.
summons lá.
Currently, if
Parece
you
que
use
foi
a skill
bem
on standing
bufado.
still target, you'll be lucky to have like 3 of the missiles hit them. But now with this spread, basically all of them will hit it. Like if you use it on a standing golem, you get pretty much all of them. That's why the damage reduced so much in competitive modes. We didn't touch it in PvE because some of the hitboxes can get so big they're hitting all of it anyways. But this should make the skill a lot more consistent. And so we'll be keeping our eye on it, but hopefully it feels a lot better to use.
Absolutely. A couple more Renegade specific changes here.
Yeah, so the bigger one for PvE is All for One is becoming a power damage trait, basically. It's going to give you a damage bonus buff for a bit of time when you use a Renegade skill. So the idea is that you want to be swapping through your Renegade and your Shiro, or whatever your other stance is going to be, and try and keep that up.
Caralho,
Try and get a
roubado,
bit
hein?
more sustained damage. We know that Renegade's burst is
Ixi,
pretty
Renegade
decent,
vai ficar interessante,
as
hein?
well as the Citadel Bombardment will also help
Esse
it.
Vindication
So we wanted
aqui,
this to be
guys,
more
ó.
of a sustained damage trait to help it
Interessante,
outside
eles
of practice,
trocaram
so we know that's
geração
the
de
one
Might
the one place it's played.
por dano de...
And
cura pelo
also
dano que você dá, né?
Vindication, we're changing its bonus. We
Geralmente
kinda had
esse
to
tipo
get
de
gutted out
mudança
of
é boa.
existence, for PvP, where it was like getting you might for each Call of Fervor, and Call of Fervor just like falls off the trees, so it was like 25 might perma, and so we had to nerf it.
Aumentando um
Now
monte
it
de
was
crit
useless,
chance
making it
também,
something
tanto
that's
no
not
Herald
useless.
quanto no
It's gonna give you
Renegade.
some outgoing lifesteal, basically. So if you want a more sustainy trait, then this is one you take. So yeah.
There we go. All right, moving on to Taylor's favorite class. Certainly his favorite green class, anyways. Ranger. So we're looking at some skills that we're not really seeing a lot of use in any real game modes across the whole game. Trying to buff some of those up. We're also looking at some weapons that we don't see.
Underutilize skill improvements, isso daí é legal.
Specifically
É
short
legal.
bow and longbow having a couple of
E
updates,
updates
little
no short bow e
buffs
long
there.
bow, interessante também. Será
Yep.
que vão reformular a skill?
The bows were falling behind, huge flavor fail, unacceptable.
Estão
so
buffando o
buff
short
them.
bow, guys. Nossa,
So
já
we're
é
seeing
câncer, vai
short
virar
bow is being
câncer do
tweaked
câncer
a
isso daí.
bit more towards competitive. It's not really ever seen, not never seen use, but compared to the other condition options, it really isn't competitive. And so we're trying to buff it up there. For PvE, the one that might be interesting is Crippling Shot. The
Não foi
bleeds
grande
head, now
buff,
that
mas
eats your
buffaram o
condition
short
damage.
bow, guys.
So its use on like an Untamed or a Druid will be the same as if you're a Soul Beast. And we're also seeing Long Range Shot and Rapid Fire be increased in their damage to be more sustained damage. the only time people really used longbow in like instance PvE content was like a precast or to set up their burst with barrage. So now hopefully the damage from it just sustain wise should be pretty decent.
Absolutely. A couple of the utility skills we mentioned, getting some
PV,
usability improvements, or not
PV,
usability
só o último
improvements,
é
but just some
PVP.
buffs. Again, kind of focusing on some skills.
É
we don't really
a
see being
elite,
taken a
né?
lot.
String of the
Most
pack.
of these are going to be PvE only.
Aumentou
Strength
só o
of the pack,
Might
getting a little bit of a
Duration,
bump up
tá?
there
Não
for
tem
its Might
problema,
duration
não
when
é
it's in
nada
PvP.
demais isso daqui.
You know, mostly just to try and give rangers
Nada
a little
demais,
bit more
pequena
options
mudança.
of supporting allies with might, or potentially just booting themselves up there. You know, some might generation for any of the builds that we're seeing pop up in World vs. World and PvP.
Yep. And then this slide, Lead the Winds is getting a mini rework where it's going to change how it gives you the boons. Before
já
it
fui
would only
seco,
give you the
guys.
boons if you strike a target beyond 1200 range, which is like really rare in a lot of cases, and it felt inconsistent. So now it gives you quickness and swiftness when you use point blank shot, which feels a lot better. You can combo point blank shot into rapid fire or barrage or channels, so you have quickness for them. So maybe this trait sees use. It has a lot of competition with the other two slots, but you know, if you want to be a bow ranger, then hopefully this feels better. And then Juvenile Aether Hunter, these are a lot of words to say we hopefully made it feel better to use. It had some pretty long aftercasts and weirdness to it, so we're shifting it and maybe also hopefully making the Soul Beast version of it feel better, kind of increasing that Leyline Vortex to feel more like a fire overload where you hit them a lot of times. So yeah, so hopefully Pet feels better to use.
Absolutely. I do want to summon my Air Shark. And got some Soul Beast changes here. Going to be fixing issues for a couple of pet skills. And then a little bit of a nerf to Prelude Lash in the competitive game mode, just lowering that power coefficient down. And another usability or utility skill that we're not really seeing used quite as often in PvE, having its cooldown reduced.
Nada demais.
Derelict Stance. Yep. Untamed.
So these are some Untamed things. The Unleash Pet. We got a lot of feedback that people don't like seeing their pet be green all the time when they play Untamed. And so we are changing it so Unleash Pet's visual effect will now fade over time, kind of like it does on you. So it'll become green and then back to normal. So if you like having your pet unleashed, but don't like it being green, hooray. Toxic Shot, this kind of rolls back into Shortbow, how we were talking about. It's Untamed Ambush was kind of holding it back a decent amount from use. So we're increasing its usability and also a bit of its damage. Not by a whole lot, but hopefully the skill feels a lot better to use.
Could I get maybe like a little bit more of an enthusiastic hooray? Tim?
Yay!
That was yay, not hooray. I want the whole word.
Take what you can get, man.
Oh, where's Cal? Alright. Moving off of Taylor's favorite green class to my favorite green class, Necromancer. We're going to be looking at World vs. World. I love Necro. I never had any issues with Necro. Looking at World vs. World buffs for sword specifically.
Se esses buff no Harbinger for pra PVP, fudeu.
Since, the initial launch.
E não vai vir nerf no Conde Reaper, hein? Ah lá, não veio. Pelo jeito vai continuar sendo os donos da fila, né? Da ranqueada.
Depending on what sort of build you're playing.
Sede,
and then we're also looking at some survivability improvements for Harbinger in this patch as well. But here, of course, we've got some of these sword skills. Gorman Dies. What a great name that skill is. Glad to see that one return.
Who named it.
Wonder who named
legal,
it. So that's just going to have its power coefficient going up. And then we're going to be changing how the leap skill, the 3-skill Path of Gluttony works a little bit. So it's the initial hit is now going to corrupt a boon instead of having to wait for that flip over the second charge of that leap to get the boon removal. So you have a little bit more boon removal up front. Again, hopefully to try to make that a little bit more competitive with things like Axe 3, which is already going to be corrupting boons on hit there. And then, of course, lowering the number of boons to reflect that for PvE and PvP, where it's going to be matching the number that already was there for World vs. World. So getting some more boon rip up front for players, especially in World vs. World, is going to be pretty important. That's obviously something that Necromancer plays around a lot, and so we're going to be hopefully seeing that feel a lot better. And then, of course, power coefficient.
Sede, hein, mano? Não ter nerf no Conde Reaper, mano. Bem sede.
Is going to have a little bit of a buff for PvP as well. Just getting Scepter hopefully feeling a little bit better for some Necro builds in PvP. So boons corrupted up from 1 to 2. And of course, the cooldown is going to be going up a little bit alongside that as well, since it'll be a lot stronger.
Yep. we wanted to see Scepter get buffed a bit after Weapon Master training. Pistol kind of overshadowed everything. And so we're trying to increase what Scepter wants to do, you know, hit that big 3 skill, get 2 corrupts. Increasing the cooldown
bufaram o cetro, né? Interessante, isso é bom. Pra eu que perdi o acesso à espadinha. Dá pra brincar de cetro, depois vou testar a build com cetro no Necro.
Some more changes that we're kind of seeing a little bit of a common trend here. Cooldown reductions for PvE, trying to make some of these utility skills that we don't really see as often across classes a little bit more competitive. So a bunch of those going to be getting cooldown reductions for PvE, and a little bit of a QL buff there for Spectral Ring in PvE. It's now going to perform an initial strike that deals Defiance bar damage for PvE.
Nossa, Spectral Walk no PvE é 20 segundos de cooldown, mano. Caralho. Se fosse isso no PvP, nós tava fudido.
Basically, all of those skills that like CC'd someone when they walked through it were like completely useless in PvE when the boss stands still. So now we're changing all of them, so PvE only. You'll do a strike when you set it down, and anything like on the wall or inside the ring will get CC'd when you use it.
Yeah, and it is pretty important to note that is obviously going to be PvE only, since a lot of those skills are already very strong and used a lot in World vs. World and PvP, and we're not going to be changing the way those skills work in those. So, Harbinger changes here. PvE only.
PvE.
First 2. Elixir Bliss, again, similar as always.
Tá, a última aqui é pra PvP, essa de baixo aqui.
And then also a little bit of protection added across the board.
Deixar o Harbinger um pouquinho mais tanker, né?
And then Implacable Foe.
Não fala quanto de damage reduction, podiam falar, né? Será que é 50% igual o Shroud normal do Necro?
Both having less health from Blight and also not having Shroud is like a really big hindrance from your performance.
PvE nem é competitivo, não sei pra que mexer tanto, tem que balancear no WW e PvP.
Ignorance is getting protection.
Verdade, verdade.
So just having that source of protection that you can use.
É bem verdade mesmo.
I'm pretty sure Elixir
100% 10 stacks de stab.
That would be like pretty good.
Caralho, Caos.
It's around 2 seconds of damage reduction for 50%.
Aí é foda.
If people didn't know, when you're in like Death Shroud or Reaper Shroud, you have 50% damage reduction just naturally. And so this should kind of emulate that for when you go into Shroud. So people, you know, if you can see a burst coming and go into Shroud and mitigate a lot of it, it should hopefully help skilled Harbingers mitigate a lot of the defenses they lose for being a Harbinger.
Absolutely. All right, moving on to Mesmer.
PvE.
Looking at some
e não mexeram mesmo, guys. No Conde Reaper. Se preparem aí. Mais uma season de Conde Reaper reinando.
This patch specifically for PvE. Build that we're not that we want to see bumped up a little bit there. A lot of condition.
Tô indignado, mano. Como é que os caras não nerfam essa porra? Acho que tá todo mundo jogando, deve ser, sei lá, 40% da player base do PvP joga de Conde Reaper, velho.
Condition Mirage is a build where we always have like our eye on to make sure that it doesn't get out of control, but we felt like it was in a point where we could definitely touch it a bit.
Caralho, roubado! Que buff nos Axes! Ixi, guys, o Axe vai ficar muito roubado agora. Isso daqui é de...
This is a game-wide change, but really hopeful for competitive. Ether Feast is a heal that, you know, a lot of people
não é de miragem, né? É do core mesmo,
like,
do auto-attack.
If we put some condition cleanse on it, something Mesmers, you know, don't have a lot of access to, be a pretty good buff. So this is
caralho, Conde Mesmer?
So it's like 1 to 4.
Esse skill do Axe aqui foi bem buffado, mano. É 100% de buff, né? O dano.
And then the last 2 changes here are just those utility changes we talked about.
Alright, this is actually my favorite page of the patch, the entire patch. Signet of Humility. Getting some changes to how that skill functions a little bit. So you're now going to be required to have a target, so you can't necessarily precast it there. You also cannot retarget the skill. It has a big effect above the target's head, so you know if you're being targeted with it, as well as reducing the duration of when you get transformed into that MOA. From 6 to 2 seconds in World vs. World. So this is mostly aimed at people kind of single targeting commanders in World vs. World and abusing that skill, but also just giving it a little bit better visual tell, a little bit more counterplay around the skill, since it is a very, very powerful skill in general in modes like PvP as well.
Moasec 2 Não, verdade. Reduziram. Nossa senhora, reduziram pra caramba. Mas só WVW, né? Mas mataram o Mo, então, pô. Morreu o Mo.
So stealth mowing now has a tell. Unfortunate for you Mesmer players that love to do that. And to make sure that this target is always accurate, it now requires a target and it can't be retargeted. So you can't like start the cast on someone and then swap over. If you start the cast on
Redução de
someone,
mais
that's who
de
it's gonna hit.
100%, né? Mais de
And yeah,
50%.
for World v World, we're also reducing the duration to 2 seconds just because we felt like in World v World specifically, the skill did not serve a lot of purpose, but we really wanted to preserve its use in PvP specifically, and so we kept the mechanic. We're making sure that if you get hit by a Mo in World v World, you're not just going to die because people focus you and you can't do anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, as we've seen, a bit of a common trend, a lot of cooldown reductions for a couple of skills that we're not really seeing being used very much. Massive Viz, Signal to Midnight, Veil, Mental Gymnastics, as well as number of Vuln stacks.
Ó, mas tá vindo muita mudança pro PvE, hein? Eu acho que vai mudar bastante o meta do PvE.
Right, moving on to the
PvP mesmo não veio nada de grandioso até agora, né?
Yep. So
Tudo mudança pequena.
Is,
só no Herald e no Renegade que foi mudança mais impactante.
Named Blade are going to get a strike damage bonus. That should hopefully be the bump that Power Vert gets to be a competitive build.
All right, moving on to blue class. As we mentioned earlier, shouldn't be a surprise.
Guardianzada PvE,
as we're calling them, are going to be getting some same
Será que isso daqui é
ring
PvP?
there for Necro, some quality of life there for PvE.
Radiance é bom no PvP, se eles melhorarem. O Valor também é bom.
Spec that just hasn't really seen quite as much love as some of the other ones recently. And looking at some improvements to Valor, just to kind of try and give a little bit more synergy value there with Radiance. So maybe we see a little bit more meditation builds for Guardian being brought back a little bit again. Potentially even some core DPS builds, potentially. But as we can see, their line of Warding, Ring of Warning, and Hunter's Ward, again, only in PvE, are going to have initial strikes that will be affecting Defiance bars. Again, same thing as Spectral Ring.
Isso daqui é PvE.
And then some cooldown reduction for
PvE, guys. Caramba.
In PvE on Guardian builds there for utility skills. Moving on, we get the Valor skills, or Valor traits I should say, Focus Mastery and Monk's Focus. We're going to be putting Resolution on them again,
isso aqui é
just
bom,
give them some more synergy with Radiant Straight Lines, and kind of make,
Monk's
again,
Focus,
that
isso aqui ficou bom, hein? Isso aqui é bom. Resolution no Guardian sempre é bom, né?
Feel a little bit better, so Resolution when you use meditation skills, and Resolution when you're using focus skills. Focus Mastery, a trait that we're not really seeing being used often.
PvE only balance patch, yeah, it seems like that, Lang.
For Resolution uptime, maybe you take that trait. And then for Dragon Hunter, only one change there. Fragments of Faith, again, cooldown reduction there for PvE.
Yep, Monk's Focus here is intended to fill a hole. Guardian for the longest time now has been really balanced around the trait in Radiance that gives you crit chance when you have Resolution, but the only real consistent way to get Resolution was from Virtues, and using Virtues in that line, and so we're hopefully, with giving Resolution on Meditation skill, maybe there's a chance that Guardians can drop Virtues for Valor now and still have Resolution uptime for their Radiance traits, and feel better about taking Meditations, because now they have the damage to do it.
Eu que jogo de core, eu consigo jogar de Valor e
Virtus. Again, mostly going to be aimed at PvE. In fact, everything's going to be aimed at PvE.
Mais Resolution sempre é bom.
Buffing up support Firebrand.
No Guardian.
So might stacks are going to be going up, duration's going to be going up. We're going to be reducing some page costs for some of the more supportive skills on Firebrand.
Pô, só PvE, mano.
Just trying to make the support spec a little bit more competitive with some of the other supports in PvE.
Yep, Guardian has a lot of utility, and Firebrand had trouble squeezing all of it out when it wanted to, and also keep up healing compared to some other classes. So we're reducing page costs so that they can use the utility when they need to, but also have the pages for healing, as well as Daring Challenge is getting its taunt duration increase, which goes to, at the beginning, we showed that taunt was getting its Defiance damage to match Fear, so it's going from 75 damage to 200. So pretty good skill there. And as well, Lore Master is getting its page generation interval lowered to match PvP, to go with, if you want more pages, Lore Master helps you get more pages even more now.
More pages more often.
Aí.
What's not to love? All right.
Parece que é pra PvP também, as Alchemy Improvements.
So, moving on to Engineer. We've got Alchemy Improvements, we've got PvE Power Adjustments, and we've got Elixir X, which is its own node, apparently.
Vamos ver. Alchemy eu uso. Eu uso em quase todas as minhas builds de engenheiro.
So, Healing Turret, not really seen very often.
Interessante.
in the competitive modes, just going to reduce its cooldown a little bit. It is a pretty strong skill, and we did, I think, sometime last year make some changes to it to try and make it feel a little bit better to use. But we're still not really seeing it being used in PvP or World versus World, and World versus World especially, where we do see obviously a lot of med kit usage. Not necessarily sure that this would take it over, but just trying to bump up that skill a little bit, make it feel a little bit more competitive. It is a pretty powerful skill on its own, so we don't really want to buff up the skill itself, but just some cooldown reduction there for
what?
Yep.
If you didn't have my
big
cry.
Change.
Yes.
Cal's not here, so I can
Let's
make fun
see,
of him.
man.
He is convinced that personal battering ram is the correct utility to take on support engineer, and that's why we're lowering the cooldown. You can see here that we're reducing the launch distance to 0. That basically means they're going to go up, down instead of away from you. This is so we can safely reduce the cooldown without having to worry about decap NGs. Decap builds something we historically really hate, and so we're trying to make sure that they don't come back.
Yeah. So it is really important, if you are planning on giving any feedback about the changes you've seen today, when you go and give your feedback, regardless of anything else you say, please let us know if Cal is either right about personal battering ram or wrong. And especially if you think he's wrong.
Essa mudança aqui no battering ram, sei lá, mano.
Yeah, absolutely. Got some cooldown reduction there for Elixir S, as well as for Elixir U.
Você vai ter muito CC, mas tiraram a usabilidade do CC, né, de tirar do Node.
A little bit less of that cooldown reduction.
Não sei se vale a
And then we've
pena.
got some of the boon durations to reflect that reduced in PvP and World versus World. Obviously, stability being a little bit more important in World versus World specifically, you're going to have that duration going down in that mode only.
Yep.
More utility skill changes here, as well as some tool belt skills. Toolkit skills. So cooldown reduction there for utility. Utility goggles, detection pulse is now going to inflict vulnerability on enemies. This is obviously a skill that doesn't really do much in PvE specifically. And so, it's a little harder to take utility goggles. It has a very niche use. Well, not necessarily niche use, but it has some use in some of the more competitive modes if you're playing against players who can utilize stealth. And, so we do see it used sometimes there, but we're not really seeing it used in PvE. So now maybe inflicting vulnerability will allow you to feel a little bit better about taking utility goggles, especially with the cooldown reduction, as it is a pretty strong skill just in general. And then, again, some toolkit buffs.
Toolkit, hopefully pretty good. Magnet is getting a similar treatment to MOA, just because it had the same kind of problems that MOA did in World v World. That this is a long-range CC and can really be used to pull people out of position. It didn't have a great tell, so now we're playing the full visual effect over its channel, and then it also can't be retargeted. But to also
tiraram o retarget da Magnet, que é esse fio de puxar da chave de fenda. Ou seja, se tiver castando ela, você não pode mudar de target mais. Senão você cancela o cast. Isso é um nerf bem grande.
Magnet gives you pretty good CC, so pretty well-rounded kit, I would say.
Absolutely. All right. So this is, of course, I think what is now going to be everyone's favorite page, Elixir X.
Mine.
Yeah, it certainly is. Elixir X is going to have a chance to transform the user into a Lich.
So this is wow!
Elixir X. Either a tornado,
Lich tornado, and
Warriors Elite Rampage. So we're going to be now changing it to have basically a 1/3 chance to transform you into one of those two.
Interesting.
The idea being that a lot of the times, especially in competitive modes. Or PvP, you'd really be trying to get that Rampage. You wouldn't necessarily want to be getting the Tornado. So we are lowering the chance to get that a little bit, but we're also lowering the chance to get Tornado a little bit, and giving you a pretty strong utility skill, or a pretty strong, powerful skill in the form of Lich. Adds a little bit more flavor to the skill, adds a little bit potential more usability, changes up how maybe that skill can be used, and play it around a little bit. Just make it a little bit more fun and exciting, instead of just nerfing the skill, or rather nerfing the chance to get Tornado.
I mean, yeah,
guys.
The biggest reason was like, why not?
Wow.
Why not? Yeah.
Why not?
Why not?
Yeah, you also see on this page we're increasing grenade damage a bit in PvE. There was a bug fix to make it so kits are not supposed to proc Relic of the Firework in anywhere, and so we fixed that, and that made these skills not exactly worth using anymore, so we're trying to buff them up in compensation. It's kind of like a trade here. You'll see when we get onto Hollowsmith. We're hopefully not nerfing it that much, but shifting its power budget into grenade and out of some other places. But if we move on down to the last 2 points here, we see that we're changing alchemy a bit. Compounding chemicals is getting a function that it used to have back. It used to cleanse conditions. It was removed. Now it's back. It's pretty big because in competitive we see that tools is pretty good at removing conditions. And that's a big part of NG is having that sustain there. And so by putting it in alchemy, we're hopefully giving them some different ways that they can play engineer. This also goes along with, you'll see emergency elixirs being reworked to boiling point, where you will gain fury when you gain might at or above the threshold. When you're playing alchemy, you have a lot of might, HGH and everything. And so hopefully it should be a pretty consistent fury access, which is another thing we saw in competitive. When you want to play like grenade alchemy as a common build, you really lack fury because the fury trait in explosives competes with grenades. And so hopefully having fury access here should make it feel pretty good to go like grenade elixirs as you did before, and bring that build back, because that was one people enjoyed a lot.
Absolutely. And here are the Holosmith changes that Taylor sort of just mentioned, where, you know, in compensation for buffing some of the other tools that Holosmith or Engineer can bring, we are lowering some of the damage bonuses from heat in PvE.
Yep. 50%, pretty big number. A bit of an overshoot, so we're bringing it down to 35, but, you know, we're buffing grenades back, so deal.
Yeah, absolutely. But obviously something we'll keep an eye on, as Taylor mentioned. You know, we don't want to just completely, you know, nerf the build, nuke it out of existence, and that is certainly not what we're trying to do here. So if we do overshoot on some of the numbers, we will be keeping an eye on it and making sure that it is still a strong choice. But I believe that will bring us to our final class, Elementalist. If anyone was paying attention, we did kind of go opposite day. We went opposite alphabetical order, saving Elementalist for last, best for last. Actually, the main reason we do this is just because Cal always wants us to do Elementalist first.
Okay. Dagger and staff usability improvements.
While he's not here, he doesn't have control over us. So, looking at Elementalist, we've got some power feats for Scepter and PvE. We've got some usability improvements for Dagger and staff, and we've got some specifically Tempest and Earth specialization improvements overall. Alright. We can see the Tempest for the Scepter changes. Go ahead.
These are the Scepter changes. When Pistol came out, a lot of people were confused. They're like, we already have a Condi weapon. But Scepter in the competitive modes is a power weapon mostly, and so we wanted it to reflect that in PvE as well, but its power numbers were just really outdated and not good. So we're buffing all of them. Here you'll see these are a lot of auto attacks and 2 skills. We're buffing the auto attacks, and you'll see we're buffing the Weaver ones, because we feel like Weaver will be the one most likely to take use of Scepter. So you see that all the auto attacks are getting buffed, Water Trident also getting buffed, and then we go to the... Actually, next slide is still core, but you'll see Weaver's getting buffed.
Yeah, Weaver's gonna be
these are Dagger, so swapping gears, Dagger also has been kind of not used a lot. So we're taking a look at it. You'll see Drake's Breath and Cone of Cold getting the same casting time reduction. You know, it felt pretty sluggish nowadays to be casting for over 2 seconds. So we're reducing the cast time, also increasing the damage a bit on Drake's Breath and increasing the healing on Cone of Cold. And then also looking at Dagger, we're giving it even more blast finishers. Convergence is going to be a blast finisher. Frozen Burst is going to create an ice field before performing its blast finisher. So you're going to see that you'll make an ice field, then you'll blast it naturally, kind of like how Mesmer Rival 3 blasts itself naturally. And then Ring of Earth, Earth and Rush also getting some little tweaks.
Bufaram bastante a Dagger, hein?
In all game modes.
Absolutely.
Dagger, eu vou testar depois, hein?
Staff skills, as well as, again, some just utility skill cooldown reductions there for PvE, but similar sort of deal in PvE as we saw with the Guardian Wards, the Spectral Ring on Necro, is that static field, and Steady Ground are going to be performing that initial strike that will deal some Defiance damage for PvE. Again, only PvE changes there for the staffs. But here we go. So going on to some of these Earth changes, and this is a little bit of the reason why we added some more Blast finisher usability on Dagger. Looking at Earth's Embrace, trait has been reworked, gain resistance after using healing skill, and Earth's Blast, trait now grants barrier to the user in addition to its other effects. Barrier not be granted when attuning to the same element. And Diamond Skin
Talvez
is now going to
daqui seja
remove
boa.
a condition from yourself and
As
allies
duas
using
whatever.
combo field with the Blast finisher, so that's going to be ally Condi Cleanse for blasts, and then it'll be self Condi Cleanse when you combo with Elite finisher. So you know, in World versus World, we don't really see support Ellie, specifically Tempest, being brought quite as often. You know, ever since we started buffing
Hipervind é isso, até a próxima season. Não, eu acho que o Vind meio que deu uma morrida, o Caos não tá tão forte, não. Nerfaram o Hammer, né?
You know, we don't want to just
o que vai vir forte agora é o Berserker, né? Que a gente tava vendo hoje de manhã. Hyper Berserker, certeza, mano. Os câncer do momento agora.
Gives Elementalist, gives Tempest a little bit more options. Cleanse obviously being something that Tempest, you know, was competitive with before, and now has fallen behind a little bit, so this will give you more cleanse, especially if you combo, you know, with the dagger updates.
Mas nerfaram o dano dele. Tipo assim, não tá dando mais tanto dano assim igual tava antes. Mas mesmo assim ainda é forte, né? Não é ruim não. Até porque bate um range mó longe.
Yep. Soothing Ice should be a pretty good change. Its passive trigger made it so we had to put a pretty decent ICD on it, but now that it is not passive, we can reduce it and increase usability a lot. And having that aura on heal, especially with Tempest, should feel pretty good. Flow like water, increasing the damage bonuses here. So
eles reformularam a Soothing Power.
Traits in Waterline that are a bit bruisery, but the numbers on them just aren't there. So we're trying to
also
Soothing Power also kind of going along with that. If you want to take the Waterline for just like I guess selfish reasons, for personal survivability, Soothing Power was kind of like the grand.
Acho que meu staff element ganhou buff, hein, guys.
On 300 vitality to it to match like Force of Will on Guardian, and hopefully people feel better by taking the trait now.
Alright, moving on to Tempest.
Yeah,
so Overload Air,
sim, mano. Bem mancada na real. Pô, continuar com esses câncer aí dominando a fila é triste, mano.
Big numbers coming up here. Big power coefficient buff from 0.715 to 0.951. Again, this is PvE only. Just to kind of try and make that Overload Air feel a little bit better there for Tempest in PvE.
Yep. This is like old build. Fresh air overload Tempest used to be a thing. It's not anymore. And some people want the build back. So we're trying to make it a bit more viable. As well, you see it grants Fury to allies now. Fury was a boon that Tempest support was pretty awkward with. To copy it with heatsink, you had to have someone.
Esse skill eu não lembro o que ela faz. Hard Conduit. Alguém lembra?
Really great.
Agora vai dar Protection também, é roubado, velho. Protection sempre é bom, né? Pior que o Hyper Conde tem muito cotoco que não dá clean se wipa. E nem tem New. Sim, exatamente. É muito bom pra subir na fila. Por causa disso, muita gente não sabe lidar com o Conde.
And then these last two also just help out Tempest a bit, giving more AoE protection with Hardy Conduit, so maybe you aren't taking the Earth trait line and you don't have Prod on Aura, you can have another way to give prod to people from that, and gather focus. We're just reducing the additional text, now it just gives concentration, kind of like
tá, antes só dava pro Element, agora dá pra Nearby Allies também, dá pra usar aliado próximo. Uma mudança whatever, é mais pra suporte.
Yep. So these are all just, they had a numbers bigger now.
Support Tempest
Earth and Synergy.
Well, actually, Plasma Beam has a smaller number. Taylor, I don't know if you know this, but 15 is in fact
the smaller number here is better number.
PvE.
Okay.
It's good. It's a good small.
Só essa daqui.
So Weaver should maybe have an interesting rotation with Scepter. You probably don't want to dual the tune to
nerfaram,
like
nerf no PvP.
Air tem synergy. Doesn't do damage really. But Water has Water Trident, pretty good skill. So maybe you want to like dual attune on Water.
Mataram o que já tava morto, velho, tanto faz.
So swapping through the attunements, hopefully.
Ninguém joga de Weaver, mano. Os caras vai lá e nerfa ainda.
And yeah, we see Earth and Synergy getting its damage reduced, kind of like Prelude last year.
Chutando cachorro morto aí.
Long time ago when we made CC not do damage in competitive modes, these were a bit like overlooked. So we're kind of like cleaning that up now.
Absolutely. And to wrap it up, we've got some cooldown reductions on some skills for PvE.
PvE.
Yep.
Whatever.
And that'll about do it, actually.
Caralho, mudaram muito o PvE, guys. Quem é PvE player vai ter...
Unless you have any final thoughts for this final
tem coisa pra brincar aí, hein?
Nope.
Muito Theorycraft pra fazer.
Yeah, honestly, pretty speedy run through there.
Mas o Burst FF do Weaver, sim.
And, you know, I'm
too much
sure...
yapping.
too much
Na mão de
yapping.
quem
All of
sabe
these
jogar é forte,
insights
né?
and expositions and tangents, not really that important or useful. No one really wants to know why Cal does what he does. Of course, I'm kidding. But yes, he will be back once again for the next stream before anyone loses their mind about wondering where Cal is. But just to recap, as always, the notes that you just saw, especially the Warrior notes, which we didn't really see very much. Of course, that's my fault. Will be posted to the forum at the end of the stream, which is about to conclude. And please make sure you give us your feedback on the notes that you saw. Again, we'll be looking over those or for that feedback, especially over this weekend, but just in general, we'll be making sure to read, our various sources of feedback gathering as we move forward. Yeah, let us know what you thought. Thank you very much for tuning in and watching. And yeah, I think any final
isso,
words
guys. Nada demais pra PVP. Talvez ali a mudancinha no engenheiro.
That sounds more like something you'd say.
Mais as mudanças no Herald e no Renegade,
not really
né?
final words.
Turn it off.
And you're not ending the stream. I'm ending the stream. I still have that power. It doesn't matter if you're at the head of the chair now that Cal is gone forever. I still can.
Never coming back.
We probably should actually just, I think, sit here for 14
locked out
minutes
of teams.
and make sure we get
They've
extend all
taken
the way
away
to the hour.
privileges.
Excuse me. Yes. All right. We will be ending the stream there. And Taylor, if you really do want to, you can do the outro. I'll let you do it this time.
Stay safe, gamers. We'll see you in the mists.
All right, everyone. Until next time,
Então é isso,
we'll
guys.
see you in the mists. Have a lovely
Vamos
day.
de ranked,
Take care,
né?
everyone. Thank you
Tá
for
bom
watching.
já.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.